encouragement. I really, really appreciate that. I could just add this. I'm very grateful what good audience you are, not just your participation, but we just don't have to go into any silliness or distraction. You guys are reflective and focused, and it tells me a lot about where you guys are with the Lord and your interest in these things. I really, really do appreciate that. I want to say one of the things to you real quick. Our focus has been, I hope this works. Oh, there. Having a faith that lasts. And back home, I just taught a whole quarter of classes on this. So there's so much more to say than we're going to have time to say. And I really hope that if you guys have questions, that you won't let them linger, but that you'll talk to somebody about them. I hope this will just be the beginning of a conversation. Maybe that you're going to have with your mom and dad, or with the guy that preaches where you go to church, maybe one of your shepherds there, or maybe an older Christian friend. I don't know who sits on the board of directors of your lives, or who you're close to. You've got struggles, you've got questions. Don't let those linger. Talk to people about those things. We could have done a whole segment on doubts, how we need to manage those well. I would encourage you to manage your well. It's okay to ask about them, talk about them. Church setting is a safe place to do that. I want to encourage you all to do that. If you have other questions about your faith. Okay? So, last topic for today. I want you to think about this. Do the same thing we've done every morning. I want to brainstorm this a little bit. You guys give me some feedback. And I want you to think with me about how science, wow, look at that horrible font issue. Who did that? I'm going to blame the tech guys, okay? That's just the safest thing for us people to do. It's not really y'all's fault, but I'm still blaming you. I want you to think with me how science could potentially become an obstacle to faith, or how science might ultimately cause somebody to lose their faith. Will you kind of stir that around in your brain for a minute and then give me some feedback about that? What do you think? How might science impact whether or not someone's faith lasts? That's another way to ask it. Yes, sir. Okay, so we get too plugged into the natural and we forget God is supernatural and think about that side of the equation. Thank you for that. Somebody else, can you see how science might potentially impact faith? Zoe, is your hand up? Wow! Zoe's one of my kids. Come on, let's hear from you.
Science seems so reasonable when you don't look too close. You almost start to doubt.
Say that one more time. I didn't hear the beginning.
Science seems so reasonable at first, but if you don't look too close, so you might start to doubt other stuff. It doesn't explain stuff.
Okay. Because science seems so reasonable one of the girls in our church family. And so I sat down and talked to him. Here's what he said to me right out of the gate. He said, look, I grew up as a believer, believed in God, I believed in the Bible. He said, and I want all of that to be true. I want there to be a God. I want there to be a heaven, right? I want all of that. He said, the problem is, when I went off to college, I was working in the sciences, took all these classes that built the mountain of evidence for the theory of evolution, right? Because that's what evolution is talking about. There is this mountain of evidence that makes it so obvious you've got to be blind not to believe it. And so he listened to them build the mountain of evidence. And he realized that it was in conflict with what he believed about the Bible and about Genesis. And he told me, he said, I want to believe. But he said, I am not willing to check my brain at the door of the church building. Not going to stop thinking to be a Christian. And in his mind, at that point, that was at stake here. That's what was at stake. Either I just sort of close my eyes to the facts and be a Christian, just blindly follow along, or I can reject Christianity and I can pursue facts. That was kind of what was in his head. So I do think that evolution for a lot of people has ended up being a huge problem. All right, dude, you're wearing the Zion sweatshirt. I cannot not call on you. Go.
My comment, I think, has more to do with philosophy, but I feel like that's very closely related to science because philosophy is derived from it. So, like with evolution, in survival of the fittest, you have to accept that there's like suffering within it, and things have to die in order to progress evolution. And that's one of like my main issues with it on other things, but whenever you look at that, it can be easy to fall into like a nihilistic belief like view of the world. That's very easy to break your faith because if nothing matters, then what's the point of doing it? You might as well just go ahead and like embrace like the hedonistic lifestyle or something that separates you very far from the righteous.
Well, see, you're tapping into a deep hole there, because there's a whole lot to be said about what are some of the underlying reasons people would want to believe that that's true. Thank you for that. We'll touch a little bit on that this morning. All right, I'm going to brainstorm a little more with you, and then I got to move on. I saw you drinking coffee. I'll use it as an excuse to call on you. Go ahead. Was it good coffee, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest things is because our society puts like this big separation on God and science. It's either God or science. Like they can't be true at the same time. And so they hear science explaining all these things and they're thinking, well, that's obviously true, so it has to be science and God is just out of the picture. In reality, they're both true at the same time because God created science. And he created all these patterns. He created all these things for us to figure out how it works. So that would make sense.
Okay, so thank you for saying that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hijack the answer that you just gave. Is that okay? If I hijack your answer. And I basically have about 9 statements that I want to put out for us to talk about. And I think as we do that, we'll gather some of the other information you guys bring to share. Thank you for all the hands that went up. And we'll try to work that in as we go. But you actually just said what was the very first thing that I wrote down. Ooh, pause. I forgot that I had this slide up here. To illustrate what we were just talking about. There have been some recent studies done. This one was 2023, and it talks about the reasons for doubt. If you look down here, 31% of people who have no faith at all. So 1 out of 3 people said, science is a reason that I doubt that what Christians believe is true. And then go back a little bit further, about 9 years ago, there was another study about why unbelievers can't embrace faith. Notice, I believe that science refutes much of the Bible. That's about 1 out of 5 people say that. And then a little bit less, I don't believe in fairy tales. See that? Same kind of idea. I just think the Bible is at odds with science as we know it. So there are 9 statements that I want to make to you for us to go over today. And the first one is what you were just saying a minute ago. And that is, culture wants you to believe that science and Christianity are mutually exclusive. Do you know what I mean when I use that phrase? That science and Christianity are mutually exclusive. What does that mean? or you can be a believer, but you cannot do both of those things. So, what I really want to emphasize, if we don't go any further than this morning, I want to be crystal clear with you about this. That is not true. That isn't biblically true. I want you to notice a couple of passages with me to demonstrate that. We're going to Psalms first. We go to Psalms. I'm looking at Psalm 19, a familiar one. I think maybe one of the more familiar Psalms. Psalm 19, verse 1. Watch this. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. The voice is not heard, but their line has gone out into all the earth, and their utterances to the end of the earth. It's interesting, he says here that nature doesn't speak, but it does. And the psalmist urges us, look around you, and you see God. You see the evidence of God. You see his work and his signature on his work, like an artist would sign a painting. So, Scripture urges us to look beyond the pages of the book and to look at what we see around us. And it suggests that we can see God there. Now go to the New Testament. I'll give you a New Testament passage in Romans at this time. Romans 1, verse 20. Romans 1, verse 20. Paul writes, for since the creation of the world, his, God's invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. Really interesting to me the play on word that you find in this text, where he talks about things that are invisible that can be clearly seen. Is that interesting? There are things that are invisible, things that our eyes can't see, that can be clearly seen. Like God's power. You can clearly see God's power, even though we can't see God's power. How do we do that? Look at what he made. Word. He's put his signature. We can see that. And so I want to say to you, first of all, that from a Bible perspective, there is no conflict between science and Scripture. Scripture urges us to look at the science. But perhaps for our purposes, even more important, is I want you to notice that not all scientists see a conflict between science and Scripture. Let me give you a couple of quotes to ponder. Have y'all heard of Louis Pasteur? A moderately reputable scientist? You think? Louis Pasteur said, a bit of science distances one from God, but much science nears one to him. The more you know about science, the closer it pulls you to God. That's what Pasteur said. And then in more recent history, Wernher von Braun, y'all know that? Who's von Braun? Oh man, you are breaking my heart. Y'all live in Florida, you know who Wernher von Braun is? Anybody? Wow, JP, what is happening? Should I ask JP if he knows who Wernher is? Don't ask JP. Do you know? Who is he? Yes, he was a German scientist that we stole after World War II, brought to America, and he built our rockets that brought us to the moon. Von Braun said, science and religion are not antagonistic. On the contrary, they are sisters. While science tries to learn more about creation, religion tries to better understand the Creator. I like that. So all I'm saying to you is this idea that you can't put science and religion together. Religion certainly doesn't say that. And not all scientists believe that's true. Yes, ma'am. Second statement I want y'all to consider with me is this. World wants you to believe that science deals with facts and Christianity is all about faith. In fact, I literally was watching a TV show a couple of months back. One of the characters in the TV show made that exact statement. I like science because science is about facts. Christianity is about faith. And I want to deal with that. Just out of curiosity, sort of untangle that knot that's created with that statement. What do we have to do? Yes, ma'am.
You have to show that there's elements of both in both. Like, if you look at science, there's still some things that the scientists have that somehow this is how the way this is works. Like, they can't explain it all yet. And if you look at Christianity, there's still a ton of facts in here that we're basing our faith off of.
Yeah.
And so if we can prove that there's both in both, then their statement just has to be wrong.
Thank you. Yes. Now,
I also think there's a difference between having faith and having blind faith. Faith is not something that you just believe because you want to believe it. Like, I don't think anyone here believes in like fairies or anything because there's no evidence for it. But we believe in God because there are lots of evidence.
so thank you for that. One of the things I'm hoping y'all would see, and I think that's what you're tapping into it, is that when you're talking to people about this, you often need to be sure you define your terms. Okay? Because very often, for example, when we talk to people about faith, they've got something different in mind than what I do, right? Because some people think faith is blind faith. All right, if you're going to be a Christian, you just have to accept there is a God. No evidence for that, you just have to accept that. Here's what I want y'all to understand. God has never asked you to blindly accept anything. Can I show you that in the Bible? Look at John chapter 10. I want you to see this. God does not ask you to blindly accept anything. And John 10 is a great example of that. It's one of my favorite passages in the Gospels. One I think we need to come back to again and again and again. So y'all with me in John 10? Look at John 10, down at verse 37. Jesus is dealing with his enemies. He said, if I do not do the works of my Father, believe me anyway, because sometimes you just have to have blind faith. Is that what verse 37 said? You looking at it? Do not believe me. Jesus recognized that he was making extraordinary claims. And what he says to his critics is, if I'm just making claims and I don't have any way to back that up, don't believe me. Now, look at verse 38. If I do them, that is, if I do the stuff God can do. Though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand the Father is in me and I am the Father. So I want you to notice how Jesus is willing to lay it all on the line. He says in verse 37, if I'm making claims but I'm not giving you any evidence, you are under no obligation to believe that. You shouldn't believe in me. But if I am doing the works, I think the point there is, if I'm working miracles, you guys ought to follow the same path Nicodemus did in John 3 and verse 2. Remember what Nicodemus said about Jesus? Comes to the night and says, we know that you are a teacher that comes from God, because nobody can do these signs, these works you do, unless God is with you. So God never asks you to have blind faith. Now, do I have to believe sometimes things that I can't see? Yes or no? Yes. But who said this? I think this lady said this just a minute ago. Everybody has to believe things they can see. Anytime you're talking about what happened at the beginning, whether it's the atheist answer from the beginning or my answer from the beginning, we're all talking about things that we can't see. Anytime you're dealing with history, you're talking about things that you can't see. With me on that? So, yes, we have to have faith. But is it blind faith? his faith is built on the evidence. I don't believe in God because I want to believe in God. I do want to believe in God, but that's not the reason. I believe in God even though I can't see him because I think there's compelling evidence that some super intelligence and super power has to be behind the universe. You know why I believe that? DNA. Someone asks me why I believe in God, that's my answer, DNA. You have a coding system in your cells, and so would I, that makes us who we are, makes our body do what it does. That had to be in the very first living thing, the coding system. Billions of bits of data working together in the coding system to make me operate. And you know what happens if just the slightest bit of coding is off? You know? Well, it wouldn't have been right. That's exactly right. For a friend of mine last year, it was the part that meant he died. Because one little piece of his genetic code was off. I just don't think nature does that by itself. People ask me why I believe in God. DNA. All right, so number one, got to define what faith is. What are we talking about? I'm not talking about blind faith. Okay? The second thing I think we have to talk about is facts. What are facts? Because sometimes when we deal with unbelievers equate their claims with facts. And so let's tap evolution just a little bit. One of the fundamental claims of evolution is that a long time ago, all life started in a little puddle. Right? Way back on primordial Earth, there was a puddle with chemicals, and it just happened to be that all the right chemicals were there in the right proportions, and they all were able to come together to create the very first self-replicating cell, including the DNA that was needed for that life to exist. Evolution claims that it is a fact that happened. Question, is that true? Is it a fact that happened? I didn't hear you. Where are you? Who's talking to me? What? Well, okay, so nobody observed it, right? Yeah, that's not possible. It's not been replicated in a lab anywhere, and the textbooks lie to you about it. Is it true? We haven't ever made life in a test tube. We don't even know the process by which this would work. I mean, here's the interesting thing. There are even evolutionary scientists who say, yeah, you can't do that. I'll actually give you all a name. One of my favorite scientists in all of this discussion is Dr. Dean Kenyon. Dr. Dean Kenyon, years ago, like back in the 70s and 80s, was a professor at San Francisco State University. I think he's with the Discovery Institute. Anyway, not only was he teaching at San Francisco State University, he was also an evolutionist. In fact, he was a high-level evolutionist. This guy had actually written a textbook on the chemical parts of Darwin's evolutionary processes called biochemical predestination. He'd actually written about this. So this is a super high-level evolutionist. But he's also an honest scientist. And he's in his classes, and he's teaching one spring semester, and his kids are going through his book, and they're beginning to ask him questions and pushing back some. He said one of my students actually brought me a book that he wanted me to read, and so over the course of that following summer, I read his book, I started re-examining my theories, and he said after months and months of doing that, I was confronted with this unavoidable reality. He said my theories were wrong. It just wasn't possible that nature in this way. It just wasn't possible. And so he changed his mind about that and began to embrace the idea of an intelligent designer. How do you think that went over at San Francisco State University? I thought y'all would say something. How do you think that went over at San Francisco State University? There's a California guy in the back. Andy, how do you think that went over at San Francisco State University? Well, they couldn't fire him because he had tenure. But they didn't let him teach in the classroom. Wouldn't let him teach because he didn't hold the line on evolution. They didn't even want the students hearing from the scientists who had a different view. With it. So, there are scientists, evolutionary scientists, who are doing the work and saying the fundamental claims of evolution. And listen, your evolutionists, you got a couple things you got to deal with. You got to deal with, okay, well, how did the beginning happen? How did everything start? The other big leap you got to deal with as evolutionists is, what about life? How do we go from non-living stuff to living stuff? And I got to tell you guys, the things that has thrown a curve to this theory right now is DNA. Because Darwin started this, Darwin had no idea about this computerized code system in every human cell that makes it do what it does. And to say nature does that? It just doesn't work. In fact, I want to give y'all a sense of how absolutely committed evolutionists are to this theory, even as the evidence for it becomes weaker and weaker. Did any of you watch the movie Expelled? Raise your hand. Wow, only the old people in the back. And I related to both of them. So, there was a movie several decades ago. I don't know what that was. Starred Ben Stein. And in this movie, he interviews Richard Dawkins. Do any of y'all know Richard Dawkins? Okay, few of you. Richard Dawkins is arguably the most famous atheist in the whole world. So Ben Stein is interviewing him about this very question, about the beginning. And I want you to listen to his theory for how life started. And listen to what his answer is. Y'all watch this.
Maybe great heavens and earth.
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
What was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, how did that happen?
I totally don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
Nor has anyone.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that their intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or even evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed the form of life that they seeded onto, perhaps this planet. At some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed the form of life that they seeded onto, perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that we might find evidence for that if we look at the details of biochemistry and molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of design.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. But that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
Did you hear it? Why are you laughing?
It's so ridiculous.
What was his answer?
Aliens.
Right? So this has only become popular in the scientific community since the discovery of DNA. And now, even one of the guys who discovered DNA, Crick, is on board with the theory of panspermia, which is the belief that millions or billions of years ago, intelligence from another part of the universe visited life and seeded life with simple life forms, or seeded Earth rather, with simple life forms that became the basis for all of the living things that exist today. They put the little life forms here, and evolution took over. What's the problem with that theory? Yes?
Who created the aliens?
It only pushes the problem to a galaxy far, far away. Yes. What's the other problem with the theory?
Well, one thing that I've heard, and this isn't a direct answer to your question, but one thing that I've heard that's come out more recently on theory is that evolution can learn, and that is intelligent. And they said, quote, I'm not gonna quote this exactly, but like that would help to explain what looks so much like creation and design, like purposeful design in the all the science everywhere. Like even the top scientists are saying, okay, this looks like design. Maybe evolution is smart. Maybe the process of learning.
Evolution is smart. Okay? Yes, sir.
There's no proof that there was ever aliens.
Don't talk to me about Roswell. We're not going to go down that road. Okay? I've been to Roswell. And it was. There is no evidence for aliens, guys. They're pure. This is the stuff of fantasy and fairy tale. They're pulling that out of thin air. Here's what I want you to see, and I think this is really, really important. There are a class of unbelievers out there that are willing to believe anything except God. And there's a reason for that. Unless the alien is standing beside me with a phaser pointed to my head, I don't have to do what he said. But if there is a God, I have to do what he said. Are you with me on that? And so, unbelievers are willing to accept even aliens as the answer rather than to entertain the possibility of God. And so I want you to think about that because I think there's something deeper underneath this than just the evidence. It's not about just going into the lab and figuring out what is true. I think the deeper issue is I don't want somebody in my life telling me what to do, which, by the way, has been the human problem since the Garden of Eden. You start tracing so many of our struggles to the root cause, and the root cause is I don't want somebody bossing me around. I want to be able to do my own thing. That's at work, even in this big scientific conversation. All right, you want it in real quick.
The aliens came before, or I have to come back.
Maybe they are coming back, we just don't know. Yes, ma'am.
I'd say it's another one of the greatest proofs that the devil is the king of this world right now, is that humanity is willing to search for and believe more unproven and ridiculous claims
stop believing in God, it's not that they don't believe in anything, it's that they begin to believe everything. And we're in the season of silly, guys. There really is a lot of wacky stuff being said today that ultimately comes from the fact that we have no compass anymore, we have no foundation, and now everything is on. All right, look at this, the fourth thing, or third thing rather, I wrote up on the board. I think this is important, all right? I'll put it on the slide right there. Scientific data can be interpreted in different ways. It's really, really important, particularly because sometimes you are not being told that there is data that's understood in different ways. And I want to give you an example of that. Does anybody know what this is? Impress me. What is it? Say it. Archaeopteryx, okay? So one of the other key elements of the theory of evolution is that one kind of animal gradually became, over millions and millions of years, another kind of animal. So reptiles, it is believed at least currently, gradually evolved into birds. And if lizards gradually became parrots, then you have to have a lot of in-between critters that are sort of lizards, sort of parrots. Now, by the way, how many of those in-between creatures would there have to be? Millions and millions and millions and millions and millions. And listen, Darwin thought we just haven't done the digging yet. If we keep digging, we're going to get down in the dirt, we're going to find millions of these. And that just has absolutely not happened. They have found Archaeopteryx, which kind of looks like a lizard bird, right? He's got some lizardish characteristics and some birdish characteristics. And so science says this is what they call a transitional form. It's one of those in-between critters, right? How many of you have seen a picture of Archaeopteryx in a textbook? Yes? Yes, I have a biology textbook back home, and Archaeopteryx is in there as an example of a transitional form. Here's the interesting thing. You know what the textbook I have does not tell you? That not only evolutionary scientists believe that some of them think Archaeopteryx was just a weird bird that's now extinct, which, by the way, there are a lot of weird animals that lived once and are now extinct. And so there are other scientists who believe that. What I wanted to make to you about that is evolutionists do not own the data. And data can be open to different interpretations. And even among evolutionists, this is an example. Here's what bothers me. Why aren't they honest with y'all about that? Why don't they quote an evolutionary scientist who believes this is a transitional form, and also quote an evolutionary scientist who says, I don't think it is, here's my evidence, and let y'all read both sides of it and draw your own conclusion? Isn't that what science is all about? Why are they withholding data from me? Which actually leads me to another point that I want to make, and y'all need to know this. Deliberate efforts are being made to hide data from you. Deliberate efforts are being made to hide data from you. Several years ago, when my kids were in school, there was a huge lawsuit in the state of Pennsylvania because they wanted to put in the science textbooks that there are other theories that explain the beginning, and we encourage our students to do lots of research, look at all the different theories, examine the evidence, draw their own conclusions. Sounds pretty scientific, right? And they literally, the state banned the school from using that sticker and fined the school $1 million for having put that in the textbook. Why did they do that? We had a professor in Beaumont, Texas, where I used to live, at the local university, who was quoted in the paper as saying, the theory of evolution has no flaws or weaknesses. Which is that's just a lie, guys. Whether you believe in evolution or not, everybody knows that the theory has weaknesses in it, like the fact that there aren't any transitional forms. I would never do that to you. I told my kids, and my son Jonathan, some of y'all know Jonathan. Jonathan's actually sitting here this morning. He can tell you, I encourage my kids growing up to study the theory of evolution. I think you should immerse yourself in it. Become as smart about evolution as you can. Because I think the more you know, the more you look into it, the more you see the weaknesses of the theory. I just think you need to be sure your research isn't one-sided. Because there's some also great books written by Michael Behe, Darwin's Black Box, and Stephen J. Meyer, Signature in the Cell. Some other great stuff to read out there. You just need to collect data that represents both sides. Right? And I am telling you, they don't want you to do that, which makes me wonder whether they hide it. All right, we're running out of time. Scientists are people too. I want you to remember that. And they're subject to the same pressure as the rest of us are. I think sometimes we imagine that the guys in the black lab coat just go into the laboratory and all they care about is finding out what's true. Looking at the evidence, slaves to the evidence, whatever the evidence says, that's what I believe. And that isn't so. Scientists are people. They're people like preachers are people. We're all subject to the same pressures. We want our friends to like us and to respect us. And if you work in a school, you want to get tenure. You want to publish books. And you wish your colleagues to think you're smart. Which even in the case of the scientist, just like in the case of the preacher, can influence the way you choose to see the evidence. Are you with me on that? Not being mean about the guys in the lab coat. I'm just saying they're no different than the guys in the suit there. We all are subject to those pressures. Scientists are people too. Last thing I want to say to you is this. I don't want you guys to ever feel dumb. I don't want you to let people ever make you feel dumb because of what you believe. And I legitimately think that effort is being made. I think people want you to feel dumb because of what you believe. This silly idea that somehow there's this great old guy up in the heaven with a long beard who made everything we see around us. When people ridicule the fact that you believe the account of the beginning in Genesis, before they make you feel dumb, would you remember what they bring to the table when they discuss origins? I want to show you one more video. is a more reasonable explanation for the pay rate. That's why I voted Jesus. Enjoyed the conversation together. Let's pray, and then I'll talk to you guys. Thank you, God, for the privilege of thinking about things that can impact faith. And we pray as we work through those obstacles that you would give us wisdom, that you would help us see the evidence that you have left for us, so that we can know that you are real and that your way is right. I ask a special blessing on all these young people as they deal with the obstacles that we have discussed. That you will give them victory over each one, and that their faith will last.